Okay, what's going on, everybody? We're here, we're live. I want to thank you all for joining me today. If you can hear and see me clearly, please drop a one in the live chat, and then we can get today's show started. And while we're waiting for the ones to come into the live chat, please make sure you hit the like button. That way, will make sure that YouTube will send out the notifications to all those that are subscribed to the channel. And it also helps within the algorithm as well, so that the video permeates throughout the algorithm and will get this video out to those who are interested in this kind of content. Also, if you haven't already and you've just been coming back and forth to this channel, but you haven't subscribed yet, please hit the subscribe button as well as the bell notification next to the subscribe button so you can be notified whenever I release a new video. And also, please make sure you share this video out on your social media platforms as well, not just to let everyone know that I'm currently live, but it also has the same effect within the YouTube algorithm. So now I see the ones are starting to come in, so we can get today's show started. Now, I've actually been sitting on this for a while, and I've been sitting on this video for like a little over a month now. We shouldn't be here too long, I would say the standard 30 minutes, maybe even quicker than that. But today's show is, in essence, kind of an extension of the Al Sharpton stream that I did last week, right? The Al Sharpton stream that I did last week was rooted in, you could say the foundation of that conversation was rooted in benign neglect, right? So very quickly, for those of you who are new to this information, and though I know for many of you this is review, I do want to take a moment to play a quick detailed summary of what benign neglect is for those who are not aware of what this is, and then we can get the rest of the conversation going. And if you're watching the replay of this and you're already familiar with benign neglect and you've seen this clip, just fast forward 2 minutes and 16 seconds if you're watching the replay. When Barack Hussein Obama, America's first biracial president, was asked the question, why not target the black community directly? And he replied,
No.
For disaster relief.
That's not how America works.
Obama was 100% correct when he stated, that's not how America works. In fact, it hasn't worked that way since 1970, because this was the year that Daniel Patrick Moynihan, advisor to President Richard Nixon, submitted his 10-page memorandum to the president. And the opening paragraph reads, as the new year begins, it occurs to me that you might find useful a general assessment of the position of Negroes at the end of the first year of your administration and of the decade in which their position has been the central domestic political issue. Now, the memorandum would go on to chronicle the decade of the 60s, discussing the progress made by Black Americans as well as their shortcomings that still needed improvement. But it's not until page 7 that the two words that would annihilate Black American politics for the next 50 years would appear. The time may have come when the issue of race could benefit from a period of benign neglect. The subject has been too much talked about. The form has been too much taken over by hysterics, paranoids, and boodlers on all sides. We may need a period in which Negro progress continues and racial rhetoric fades. The administration can help bring this about by paying close attention to such progress as we are doing, while seeking to avoid situations in which extremists on either race are given opportunities for martyrdom, heroics, histrionics, or whatever. Greater attention to Indians, Mexican Americans, and Puerto Ricans would be useful. I'm going to repeat that last sentence again. Greater attention to Indians, Mexican Americans, and Puerto Ricans would be useful. Now, you see, it's at this moment that the American government made its decision to ignore Black politics and shift the conversation to Native Americans and immigrants. Now, fast forward to 2020, and that list now also includes not only Native Americans and immigrants, but the LGBTQ, as well as women's issues by way of feminism, all the while ignoring Black American politics. So that's, in a nutshell, benign neglect, right? And like I said, for many of you, that was review, but that's where we are. So if you've been wondering why it is that Black Americans have been voting blue, no matter who, for 60 years to no avail, with little to no substantive progress. There's a lot of cosmetic progress in terms of, obviously Black folks can, go wherever they want. You can marry and date whoever you want. You can use the same toilet as everybody else, but where it really counts concerning the racial wealth gap, there has been no progress there at all, right? And henceforth, we have 1,000,001 disparities due to the racial wealth gap as well. But what's interesting about this is that outside of the fact that this policy is an official policy, and I want to pull it up for you right now, right? Despite outside of the fact that it is an official policy, right, that was written up, that I read off to you in that video, what I find even more interesting is how none of this stuff was ever hidden, right? First and foremost, you can find this policy on Google and download it for yourself. But I'll actually do you all a favor right now and I'll drop it in the live chat, right? But what's even more interesting than the fact that you can simply Google this information and you'll find the actual official PDF file of this document and of this policy, of benign neglect towards Black Americans. This was actually written up, right, in the New York Times. The New York Times did an article about this in 1970, March 1st of 1970 to be exact. And the article reads, benign neglect on race is proposed by Moynihan, right? And I'll just read the first paragraph to you, but I'm not going to go through the whole thing, right? Daniel Patrick Moynihan, counselor to President Nixon, has reported in a memorandum to the president that Negroes have made extraordinary progress and has suggested that the time may have come where the issue of race could benefit from a period of benign neglect. And we are currently still in that period. That's why all of your politics are consistently wrapped up within the context of people of color, minorities, and marginalized groups. And therefore, no change ever occurs within the community because they're using rising tide lift all ships policies to address issues that were created by race-specific policies. So once again, this stuff has always been out there. It's always been public, and it's never been hidden. And what I find even more interesting is that when you see how benign neglect is practiced today, it's so overt, it's so in your face. And the fact that nobody catches on to it unless videos like this are made, I find it kind of astonishing, right? Because now we're going to shift over to who you all are here for, Kamala Harris, right? We're going to shift over to Kamala Harris. And we all remember about a month ago when allegedly, and I'll say allegedly, right? Allegedly, what's my man's name? The guy in Florida again, Ron DeSantis, right? He was attacking African-American AP studies, right? He was attacking African-American AP studies. And upon his, attack on African-American AP studies, Kamala Harris took up the mantle to say that she's going to be the one to defend Black history, right? Because apparently Ron DeSantis stated that, Black history was a good thing and that it benefited Black people because they were able to learn a lot of skills and trades that they otherwise would not have learned had they had not been slaves, right? But here's the thing. In this speech that she gave in Florida, this speech was about 25 minutes long, I want to say. 25 minutes long. And in this 25-minute long speech, she didn't say Black not one time. Not one time. She didn't say Black one time. She didn't say African American one time. Yet she's supposed to be speaking up for Black history and the history of slavery. How do you do that when you never even mention the people that you're supposedly fighting for? Imagine that, going down to Florida to battle it out against Ron DeSantis in defense of Black history and slavery, yet I never bring up the people one time. Never say Black, never say African American, but literally brings up every other group. But here's the thing. They told you that they were going to do this. As you can see here in this article by NBC News, Kamala Harris accuses Florida officials of trying to replace history with lies through new curriculum. Now, I just want to take a moment to read this really quickly, right? So let's go through this before we get into a couple of clips. Vice President Kamala Harris on Friday rebuked the Florida Board of Education new standards for how Black history will be taught in schools, calling it an effort by extremist leaders to spread propaganda. Speaking in Jacksonville, Harris said the recently approved curriculum, which suggests some slaves reaped benefits from the skills they acquired during forced labor, was based on a policy intent on misleading children, right? But now let's get to the part that matters the most. On Thursday morning, upon boarding Air Force Two to travel to Indianapolis for an event, Harris told staffers she wanted to go to Florida the next day and asked her team to look into a trip and what it would look like, according to the official. Staff then started putting the trip together on the flight back to DC from Indianapolis. The White House official said traveling to Jacksonville was about calling out what is happening in clear terms in Florida and across the country. Now let me zoom in so you can see this very clearly, right? So you see I'm not making this stuff up. Oops. So you can see I'm not just making this stuff up, right? I'm going to read that paragraph again for you. I'll start it over. The White House officially said traveling to Jacksonville was about calling out what is happening in clear terms in Florida and across the country, underscoring that this was not just about Black history. I'm going to repeat that again, underscoring that this was not just about Black history. It's amazing to me how it is only Black Americans where you can be gunned down at a Tops grocery store in Buffalo by a white supremacist, or you can be gunned down in a Dollar General in Jacksonville, Florida. In some way, somehow, despite the fact that the individuals gunning you down are admitted white supremacists who deliberately targeted Black Americans some way, somehow, the Democrats can always find a way to make it about everybody else but you. Now, here we go concerning Black history and the history of slavery. And what are they doing? They're pretending as if they're fighting for you, but are making it about everybody else. I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. Democrats and Republicans are playing the same game, just in two different ways, as it pertains to Black history, right? When it comes to conservatives, Republicans, whatever, they either want to alter Black history to lessen the sting of it, right? They want to alter the history of slavery to lessen the sting of it, or they want to not speak about it at all. Let's just eliminate race altogether. That's why you have in some areas, across the South in some Republican states, you've been hearing about book bans and things of that nature, right? But then as it pertains to liberals, Democrats, right? Those on the left, Democrats want to turn Black history into the history of people of color, minorities, and marginalized groups with a little sprinkle of LGBT on top. That's what they want to turn it into. So either way you go, it's like pick your poison. Do you want the history to go away altogether on a Republican side? Or do you want it to get turned into the history of people of color, minorities, and marginalized groups with a little sprinkle of LGBT on the Democrat side? That's really what this all boils down to, is picking your poison, right? The main difference being is that, as always, when it comes to Democrats, they're the ones who are beating their chest, championing as if they're on your side. And first off, thank you very much, JP. Keep educating the masses. We appreciate it. I appreciate your contribution to the channel, JP. JP is the first person to contribute to today's live stream. Thank you very much. Your contribution does not go unnoticed, brother. Thank you very much. And I guess I'll agree with you there. Bernie's road book tour. He said not a sprinkle. It's definitely not. I'll agree with you. It's definitely not a sprinkle of LGBT, right? It's not a sprinkle. It's more of a whole scoop on top of it. but that's what they want to turn the history into. And I actually have another live stream that I want to do concerning that, right? But I'm not going to get too into that now. But once again, before I move on, Democrats want to turn Black American history into the history of people of color, minorities, and marginalized groups. This is why you see there's all this constant integration, and you see what you're going to see with Kamala Harris, who's deliberately integrating all other peoples into what is supposed to be a speech on Black American history and slavery, right? And shout out to JP as well for becoming a new channel member. I appreciate you, JP. Thank you very much. I truly do. Now, let's get into some of these clips here. And then we're going to head out because, like I said, we're not going to be here too long. But it is amazing to me how this woman can sit up here for 25 minutes speaking on slavery and Black history and never bring up Black people once. Here's a new term that I want you all to look out for, because I've been noticing Kamala Harris, anytime she has these discussions concerning Black history, she always refers to slavery, right? And those of you who were enslaved, Black American slaves, as enslaved peoples. Kind of like how they've changed the name of, you can't say women give birth anymore, right? They say birthing peoples now, right? On the LGBTQ side of things, birthing peoples. We've all heard that term, right? Birthing peoples. Well, Kamala Harris has a term that she's coined, enslaved peoples, because she wants to get away from making it solely about Black Americans and wants to turn it into a history about everybody else. Check this out.
On top of all of that, they want to replace history with lies. Middle school students in Florida to be told that enslaved people benefited from slavery.
Enslaved people. Now she carries on with this, okay? This is another speech that she did, and then we're going to come back to this one.
Florida, they decided middle school students will be taught that enslaved people benefited from slavery. School students will be taught that enslaved people benefited from slavery. They insult us in an attempt to gaslight us, and we will not stand for it.
I'm trying to figure out who enslaved peoples are. I don't know who enslaved peoples are. Because if you're not talking about Black American slaves, who are you talking about? And the thing is that her playing with the words like that, it's very real, right? And what I mean by that is because when you go throughout the history of America, and we all know, and I know some of you all, are going to kill me for saying this, right? All my brothers and sisters that are the real Native Americans, right? But the Native Americans were enslaved first, right? Shout out to all my brothers and sisters that are the real Native Americans. I know y'all gonna kill me, brother. We are the real Native Americans. Every time I bring up Native Americans, y'all make sure to correct me on that. But in all seriousness, the Native Americans were enslaved first, right? And then you had a period where you had, white and Black folks who are indentured servants simultaneously. Like, this is a thing that actually happened. But then from there, we move on to actual Black American slavery, right? Native American slavery didn't last long, right? That ended really, really quickly because they just physically, and I'm not speaking negative, it's just history, right? They just couldn't do it, right? Outside of the fact that they knew the landscape of America well, obviously, because they're the natives here. When they ran off and they ran away, you weren't catching them at all. If they ran off, they were gone. And secondly, they physically, from things that what I've read, they just physically couldn't cut it. As it pertains to white indentured servants, it just wasn't practical because at a certain point they can work their way to freedom, which they would, right? Because you're just you're temporarily an indentured servant. So that didn't last too long. But then we move from that to Black American chattel slavery. What's my point? By not keeping the focus there, but maintaining an illusion to where you're assuming she's talking about Black American chattel slavery is dangerous, right? As Democrats like to use that term, dangerous. But I shouldn't say dangerous, but it's just disingenuous and a gross misrepresentation, right? Because when she's saying enslaved peoples, from that moment forward, she's opening the door and inviting white indentured servants as well as Native Americans to enter through that door as well. You get what I'm saying? And then it no longer becomes about you, but it's about everybody else. And then next thing you know, you have the Chinese coming through saying, hey, well, we built the railroads. And they try to make these false comparisons to building railroads, to which they voluntarily came here to do, to chattel slavery. And it becomes all one big mess. But once again, like I said, this is very deliberate and it's very intentional on her behalf and wildly disingenuous. But that's the point, right? That's the point. Thank you very much, Capricorn Queen, for your contribution to today's show. And also thank you very much, AB Promotions. She sounds like a broken record. Yeah, she does sound like a broken record, because one of the things that her handlers did in writing her speech for her, that whole thing about they gaslight us in an attempt, they insult us in an attempt to gaslight us. She keeps saying that they insult us in an attempt to gaslight us. You know, that's something that her handlers wrote for her, and she keeps repeating that every time she gives a Black History speech, right? Thank you very much, Janesta Coleman, for your contribution to today's show. Janesta Coleman always coming through. Keep up the wonderful work, brother TD Hip Hop Media. I've been listening at work. Hit the like button. Yes, please hit the like button. There are 438 of you here in the stream right now. Please hit the like button. And also thank you very much to Don Winkler. Thank you for touching on what I've been saying about the Democratic Party. The poison is present and abundant. It is. It's very much present and very much abundant. But now let's get into some more of what Kamala Harris stated, right, in that speech. Because once again, it's very important to highlight and to actually have these clips available where people can see that she very much so makes it about everybody else, right? So let's get into a couple of more clips, and then we're going to head on out of here.
Florida. Extremists, so-called leaders, for months have dared to ban books. Book bans in this year of our Lord 2023.
She's doing the most in this year of our Lord 2023. Okay.
Extremists here in Florida pass a law, don't say gay, trying to instill fear in our teachers that they should not live their full life and love who they love.
There we go. She made sure to insert LGBT, I want to say, on 3 different occasions in here. Kamala Harris actually made a reference to the LGBTQ community in a speech that was supposed to be about slavery and Black history. She made reference to them the most out of every other reference that is made to in this 23 to 25 minute long speech, where she doesn't say Black or African American not one time, right? Let's get into some more of this.
Take a look, because there are a lot of teachers here. I think so. I'm going to tell you, one of the things I love is Venn diagrams. Any math teachers in the room? I love Venn diagrams. And I have done an exercise of looking to see from where are we seeing the attacks on things like voting rights, LGBTQ rights, a woman's right to make decisions about her own body, book bans.
It's extremely disrespectful to show up supposedly going to speak about preserving and saving Black American history and the legacy of slavery, to then just turn this into a Democratic Party political campaign speech, right? Where now she's talking about abortion, a woman's right to choose, LGBTQ once again, book bans, even though they're turning your history into the history of people of color, minority, and marginalized groups. and about, banning assault weapons and gun rights. That's very disrespectful.
And you will not be surprised to know a lot of them revert to the same source. So let's think about this then as an opportunity to build back up the coalition of all people who believe in our foundational and fundamental truths.
Let's build back up the coalition of all people who believe. The foundational beliefs of our fundamental truth. Look at how she makes it about everyone. Listen to the wording.
The truth that we are and will be a more perfect union when we fight for justice, when we fight for equality, when we fight for fairness, guided by a belief in who we are as a nation and telling our truths.
Here goes some more.
The extremist so-called leaders.
Let me rewind that back for you. My apologies.
And these are the people, these extremist so-called leaders, who all the while are also the ones suggesting that teachers strap on a gun in the classroom instead of what real leaders should be doing and be engaged in reasonable gun safety laws.
Turning it into a conversation about gun rights.
These are the same extremist leaders, so-called leaders, who make teachers fear losing their job for having a photograph of their spouse on their desk.
That's that little sprinkle of LGBTQ again, and as Bernie's road book tour said, it's definitely more than a sprinkle, right? But we're not finished yet. I got 2 more clips and then we're going to head on out of here.
We know the history, and let us not let these politicians who are trying to divide our country win.
I want to take a moment to pause real quick. My apologies. And speak to what Braxton the Snake Fiend, that's a great name. Braxton the Snake Fiend just said. Strapped teachers means safer campuses, obviously. I 100% agree with that, right? Out here in LA, and it's not just LA, I believe it's all schools across the country. But I remember it dawned on me once. It was last school year, because the new school year just started. But it was last school year. My son was having one of his, kind of many recitals or whatever. There's always something going on. Because my son's, he just started 4th grade. It was in 3rd grade last year. So, when they're kids, they always have these little recitals and things to go to, right? And I remember just walking into the gymnasium and thinking to myself, so anybody can just walk in here? You know what I mean? Like I literally, I was thinking about that in my head. I'm thinking about that right now. I was like, I could walk in here right now, strapped, and could really cause damage. The children are like right there in front of me on the stage, all, from kindergarten to 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade. If I was crazy like that, I could come in here and really wreak havoc and turn this into a really sad story. And there would be no one here to stop me. That's crazy. That's crazy. Like I'm gonna move on now, because like I'll go on a rant about it. But that's insane to me. And I know many schools are like this. This is why we see the kind of situations that we see in schools. So this idea that teachers shouldn't be strapped, or there shouldn't be people who are licensed and strapped on campus or on these school grounds, I wholeheartedly disagree with that. If a teacher's trained and they keep up with their training and things of that nature, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. I'm 100% for it, because it's insane how loose and open these schools are, where anybody can just walk in at any moment in time and wreak havoc. It's crazy to me. But anyways, I just wanted to speak on that for a minute, because it's wild. And I just want to check out what Braxton's saying right here. tdhiphop media, right? Exactly. I can't get enough of your channel, sir. And it's my first time being in your stream, and me being from the Deep South, Louisiana in here. I am pro-gun, pro-NRA, and pro-2A. That's what's up, man. Shout out to you for being in the stream for the first time. And I appreciate you finding my channel. You know, that's what's up. I appreciate you enjoying the content. So now let's get back into what Kamala Harris was discussing, and then we're going to head on out of here.
So we know the history, and let us not let these politicians who are trying to divide our country win. Because you see, what they are doing is they are creating these unnecessary debates. This is unnecessary to debate whether enslaved people benefited from slavery. Are you kidding me?
Who benefited from slavery?
This is unnecessary to debate whether enslaved people benefited from slavery. Are you kidding me?
When we say enslaved people, are we talking about like birthing people as well? I'm not sure who enslaved people are.
This is unnecessary to debate whether enslaved people benefited from slavery. Are you kidding me?
I think she's talking about white indentured servants. I think she might be talking about the Native Americans prior. That's who she could possibly be talking about, because she isn't saying Black American slaves, right? That's not what she's saying. So I think she's actually talking about white indentured servants.
This is unnecessary to debate whether enslaved people benefited from slavery. Are you kidding me? Are we supposed to debate that?
Untried Genius, you know, I'm gonna keep speaking the truth with the F at the end. I'm gonna stay speaking the truth, Untried Genius. You know, and there's the last clip right here that I want to get into in closing.
With this,
and Kamala's gonna close with this too, apparently.
And I'll close with this. History has shown us that in our darkest moments, we have the ability to unite and to come out stronger. We know e pluribus unum, out of many one. That is who we are in this room, out of many one. Americans who came here through Ellis Island, Americans who were kidnapped and brought over on slave ships, Americans who are native to this land.
Look at how she just turned a conversation about an alleged conversation at this point, you know, a supposed to be conversation at this point about Black history and slavery, right? And how she's essentially saying whether you came here on the bottom of a slave ship, whether you were here already as Native Americans, or whether you came through Ellis Island, we're all the same. We're all the same. There's nothing unique about you all. We're all the same. The only thing she left out is if you cross the border, but that's, you better believe that's included as well, because this is a nation of immigrants, right? And that's what they're pushing. Democrats push this heavy, that this is a nation of immigrants. That's why you see here at a so-called Black history and slavery speech that she's supposed to be giving in defense of that, she's rounding out her entire speech with saying that we're all the same. Whether you came here on the bottom of a slave ship, you came through Ellis Island in New York, you were a Native American who were already here, or if you crossed the border last week, we are all the same, right?
And I'll close with this. History has shown us that in our darkest moments, we have the ability to unite and to come out stronger. We know e pluribus unum, out of many one. That is who we are in this room, out of many one. Americans who came here through Ellis Island, Americans who were kidnapped and brought over on slave ships, Americans who are native to this land. Our history,
and Americans who crossed the border last week,
as a nation, is born out of tragedy and triumph. That's who we are.
That's who we are. That's who we are. Or at least that's who they want us to be, right? That's why it's extremely important at the end of the day. We all have to understand that when it comes to history, and for being honest, and once again, being somebody who lives in Los Angeles, and my son is currently a product of LAUSD, right? It is extremely important that we teach our own kids, man. You might not be able to afford homeschooling, but when it comes to history, we can't allow them to gas us up. When it comes to Black history and history of slavery, we can't allow these politicians to gas us up into thinking that either one is on our side. When Ron DeSantis put a block right on the African American AP studies, and he did it because of the I believe it was like the queer. There was some LGBTQ thing that was inserted into it, right? That was kind of void of actual history. It was more sort of propaganda. When he blocked it because of that, they didn't do that because he cares about Black history. He does that. He's doing that because he calls himself fighting a culture war, and him fighting this culture war, beating back LGBTQ propaganda, right? Is part of that. That's why he did it. It had nothing to do with Black history. Ron DeSantis could care less about Black people. He doesn't care about you at all whatsoever, let alone your history. But then the same thing goes for Democrats as well. The only difference between Ron DeSantis and Kamala Harris is that Kamala Harris will speak to you as if she cares. Yet she turned your whole history into the history of people of color, minorities, marginalized groups, LGBTQ, and immigrants. That's how she rounded her speech off. That's what she said. In closing, we're all the same. Whether you crossed the border yesterday, you came on the bottom of a slave ship, you were already here as an indigenous, or you came through Ellis Island from New York. We're all the same. And that was exactly what she told you she was going to do in the NBC News article that I read out to you beforehand. So once again, it's important that we make it a point to teach our kids ourselves. We have to, right? I have to. And I'm not perfect. I'm saying it, but do I do it? Am I the greatest father in the world that's super on top of it? I mean, just like many of you, I got a lot going on in a day. It's hard to maintain so many different things, but that is our responsibility. It's not the responsibility of the schools. If you're expecting the schools to take care of our children, then we can expect our children to fail. If we're expecting these schools to teach the history of our people correctly, then we can expect that history to be told in an upside down fashion, upside down, backwards, or not at all. That's what we can expect. But if we want our children to learn properly, to learn the proper history, if we want them to just simply be educated, then ultimately, man, that's on us. That's on us. That's on me. That's on you. That's on all of us. You can't rely on the government or any of these school districts to do that job for you. It's 100% on us. So I want to read this last super chat in closing. Thank you, JP, for coming through once again. All those Blacks in there, and yes, and Kamala Harris, like she is preaching some type of sermon. Quit being happy with fake friendship. I know, that's something that actually really drives me crazy. I can't stand when I'm listening to these little Kamala Harris speeches and dicing them up before I do a live stream, and I can hear in the background, yes, sir, they're all right now, Kamala. Get it, girl. Like, shut up. Shut up. Oh, talented 10 Boule Divine 9 Goofies. You know what I'm saying? I can't stand that. I really can't stand hearing that. That's not the common Black man and woman back there either. That's those are the, that's the ski. That's them. That's all them back there. And, talented 10th and Boule and all them. So, all right, now go ahead, girl. Now, like, okay, man. All right. It's enough of that already. But that does it for today's show, man. I want to thank you all for joining me today. Please, there are 556 of you in here right now. Please hit the like button on your way out. Please hit the like button on your way out. Also, if you're new to the channel, please make sure you subscribe to the channel. And I always forget, even though I say this on multiple live streams, but if you haven't already, please follow me on Telegram. The link to my Telegram is pinned in the live chat above. It's in the description box below. And it is also pinned in the comment section below as well once the stream ends. Follow me on Telegram if you haven't already. With all that being said, we're out of here. Thank you for all of you who contributed to today's stream. I deeply appreciate your contribution to today's show. And also shout out very quickly, because I hate to not, on Cash App. Thank you very much, Stephen M. And also for joining Patreon. Thank you very much, NLIY. I'm assuming that's not your real name, but I'll catch you guys on the next stream, man. You all have a great one and a safe afternoon. Peace.